Hi guys, this is Akib from Gimme Stream AM if you're following us on Twitch, or Gimme Stream if you're following us on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, although this video is going to be on YouTube and not Twitch. Anyway, so this is welcome to my Gaming Issues episode 2. So last week we talked about Scalebound, the Nintendo Switch and The Last Guardian. So today we're going to cover a few more issues like Guitar Hero's developer being purchased by Ubisoft, Injustice, and there's some more Switch and Fire Emblem news as well. So just an introduction to our channel as well before we get stuck into the podcast. It's basically a channel that focuses on playing classic games throughout the earlier part of the weeks. These are games that I've either missed out on or games that I'm revisiting, and then more current stuff and more blockbuster stuff throughout the latter half of the week. So those are types of games that are more single player stuff, more Japanese stuff, and more story based stuff as well. So if any of that sounds interesting, then do check us out and do subscribe to our pages and whatnot, and please do share as well. Right, let's get started. So the topics I'm going to be covering today, as stated earlier, as you can see I've got my notebook, so being well prepared, is some more Switch news, some Ubisoft news, some Injustice news, and Fire Emblem. So we're going to start off with the Switch and get some of that stuff out of the way first of all. A couple of things that I've been reading recently is that the internal space is 32 gigabytes. However, you can increase the card to, or you can put a memory card in. It does take SDXC or micro SDXC, I think it is, which can store up to 2 terabytes. However, the cards aren't available on the market yet. So I think when I had a quick look, the biggest you can buy is somewhere between 200 and 256 gigabytes. But as soon as the 2 terabyte ones are available, you can put them straight on. The good news, however, is games don't need to be installed on the console like they do for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So therefore you might not need your space as much other than I suppose DLC and day one patches and things like that. But yeah, aside from that, you shouldn't really need too much space unless if you're doing digital downloads, I suppose. Some of the news as well is that I didn't talk about last week is about the battery. I believe I read somewhere that it can last up to 6 hours, or depending on the game's capabilities and strengths and graphics and whatnot. The Zelda itself it will do about 3 hours. I think the minimum battery life they were suggesting is somewhere between the 2.5 to 6 hour range. But because it's USB-C, you might be able to charge it with a power bank. I'm not entirely sure yet. Probably is the answer to that one though. Cool, right, so let's talk about some Zelda. So the producer's been asked about, so I read this on GameSpot. The producer's been asked about again whether he would consider a female Link. Last time he was asked this question, he basically said no. And the reason he said no was because of the balance between the two good people, i.e. the one boy Link and the one girl Zelda, and then the baddie being Ganon. However, now he's saying that he's more open to it than he was before, so potentially in the future, because especially we've got Linkle in Hyrule Warriors Legends, I want to say it's called, or Hyrule Warriors anyway. So now he's a bit more open to the idea, so potentially we could have a female Link in the not too distant future, which could be an interesting one. And I wonder though if the reasoning behind it is just to try and draw more women into it, because women gamers are becoming more and more of a thing, and I think it's just maybe potentially to draw more women into the audience, which is not a bad thing at all really. But I wonder if that's maybe the reason behind it. So I also read about so I'm going to read off some facts here. So I also read about Zelda, that there was a comparison between the Wii U version and the Switch version. So this is from Nintendo directly themselves. Sorry, I just dropped my pen. This is from Nintendo directly themselves, and basically, maybe you need to take a pinch of salt with it. Don't know, because I suppose it could be a little bit biased on what they're saying. But if this actually turns out to be quite true, it's really interesting. So I've read this on IGN. Both games will have 30 frames per second. Both going to be released on the same day with the same amount of content, which is great. However, the Switch is going to be 900p when you put it on the dock, so when it's playing on the TV, and 720 when you take it away with you. The Switch version is also supposed to have better environments and better sound, and there's going to be no installation needed on the Switch. The Wii U version, however, is going to need a 3 gig install. There's going to be no special editions as well on the Wii U version, which is a bit crap really, because the ones who kind of been playing the Wii U, I suppose, are the core audience. But maybe that's why they're doing it. I suppose they're trying to entice the core audience, the core gamers, the most loyal Nintendo fans to jump to the Switch straight away. And what it is in business there's typically something called a product life cycle, and in other words, it's basically you introduce a product, and then it increases, and the amount of people who use it increase, and then it keeps increasing until you get to a peak, and then it drops off again. And the drop off, you can add more strategies and stuff to increase it again to stop it from being a drop off to the end. Um, I think what they're trying to do though is they call it the early influencers. I think is what they call the people who are on the start of the curve as you're going up, and they're the ones who will end up influencing new people, i.e., not Nintendo fans or people who aren't really sure about it, to buy the Switch and so on and so forth. And they're the ones who will be screaming the loudest on behalf of Nintendo in effect. And I think the whole reason why they're not doing the special editions is because they're the ones who are going to be probably, chances are, going to be buying the special editions. And I think what they're trying to do is make them buy the Switch by forcing them to buy the special editions. They buy the Switch in the end, and then the Switch will mean that once they, let's say, enjoy the product and whatnot, they can end up spreading the word further. This Switch is great, you guys need to buy this, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's really maybe the main reason behind it. I don't think it's so much that the market's not going to be there for it. I think it's more that they're trying to persuade people to jump onto the Switch as quickly as possible so they can drop the Wii U as quickly as possible. Which, by the way, just a side note, I'm sure I read this week, can't remember where from though, I'm sure I read this week that there's going to be no more Wii U games developed by Nintendo on the horizon either. It's just full stop, that's the end of it after Zelda. It might have been IGN where I read that one on. So I think it is really to try and hook these people in. Cool. Moving on to some other news, GameSpot. I've read on GameSpot this week that Ubisoft has bought out the studio from Activision who make Guitar Hero and who also made DJ Hero. It's a bit of a weird one actually because music games are kind of on the decline. They have been for a while. You just need to look at the recent statistics of how Guitar Hero Live did and Rock Band 4 did to kind of instigate or to check that out. I mean, was it Rock Band 4 that ended up becoming such a mess for... I mean, to be fair, it could be depending on the deal that they got as well, but it became such a mess for Mad Cats, I want to say, that loads of people ended up having to be made redundant and some people stepped away from the business and things like that. And because they're the ones who co-published the game with Harmonix, and they're the ones who actually provided the kit as well. So it's a bit of an interesting one, really. It seems a bit strange. Music games are on the decline, and Ubisoft only owns one music game, which is Just Dance. I understand that Just Dance still does fine. I mean, I suppose it would be, otherwise they wouldn't still be pumping out game after game, year on year. So I suppose it's kind of interesting as to why they bought it. Are they buying the studio to maybe enhance what goes on with Just Dance, potentially, put some more resources at it? Or are they looking at making a new Rocksmith game? Because if I remember rightly, Rocksmith was a game that Ubisoft developed, and it was basically learn how to play an actual real guitar. Or maybe it's something new altogether. I suppose we'll find out with time, but it seems a bit of an odd decision. Another bit of Switch news which I missed out earlier, and a bit of a big one, is that there's no Netflix on launch. I read that on GameSpot. However, Kotaku's had a statement from Nintendo since, and it says that there's going to be no video streaming apps at all. So I suppose that would include YouTube maybe, and Netflix, obviously HBO Go if you're in America. I'm trying to think what's the Amazon Video. There's quite big ones, and it's a bit of a big mistake really, because I think that they're focusing on games consoles. That's probably why why the Switch apps. They said that they may come later. But it's probably why the apps aren't there on day one, is they're trying to make this perfect UI, so to speak, and the perfect games, and all that sort of stuff. But in effect, it's a tablet. If we're being overly simplistic, the console is a tablet. You take it on the go. And it seems a bit odd that these people who would be taking tablets in the typical sense are probably going to be looking at things like Netflix, or probably going to be reviewing YouTube videos and such like that. So it seems a little bit odd, if I'm honest, and I think it's a big mistake that these things are on there, because in effect now people are still going to be taking the tablets. They might not be willing to buy a Switch because they're like, well, it's not going to really replace my tablet other than I've got a game, other than it's a games console. So it seems a bit odd, because to me it would make more sense, get the apps there, and then you can say, you know what, here's a games console that you can take on the go with you. But it's not only that, because you've got some tablet-like features which lets you play the video streaming apps that you enjoy. and take that with you instead of taking your iPad or your Android equivalent, or, and things like that. Your Samsung tabs or whatever they're called. So it seems a bit of a strange one. And what else kind of seems a bit stranger as well is one of the when the PlayStation 3 was out, despite the fact that the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and Wii, out of the three consoles, the PlayStation 3 was the lowest selling console, but Netflix was watched most on that than any other device. It kind of seems like a bit of a mistake to kind of avoid such a big audience like that and just forget about it. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe they're waiting. As part of the product lifecycle curve that I was telling you about earlier. Maybe when we come to the early and late majorities, maybe that's when it'll be really important. So at the top of the peak, maybe that's when it'll be really important for the apps to be there. They need to be there by that point. I think if they want to continually push it, and have more people basically buying the console and therefore the games afterwards. So next piece of news, Injustice 2, I nearly said 3. But that's only because I have a 3 written down here, and that's because I'm talking about the 3 editions. So there's going to be 3 different editions of Injustice. You're going to have the normal edition, don't need to talk about that, that's going to be the standard game obviously. You're going to have a deluxe edition, or a digital deluxe edition actually as they're calling it, which is going to have 3 characters and 1 skin. Now the skins are a little bit weird. The skins are calling Premier skins, and basically it's going to let your character change quite significantly. It's not just a simple colour. For example, it's going to change Supergirl to Power Girl. She's still going to, from the way I'm reading into this, I mean, I'm purely speculating here, but she's probably still going to have Supergirl's moveset, but her voice is going to change, her look is going to change, and the dialogue is going to change. And they're going to have the equivalent for Flash, and they're going to have the equivalent for Green Lantern. So it's a bit of an interesting one that they're kind of going about it this way. Also, you have the Ultimate Edition. So the Deluxe Edition includes 1 skin and 3 characters. The Ultimate Edition, however, includes 9 skin and 3 characters. From my understanding on when I'm reading this, and I've read this off GameSpot again, is that the skins are going to be, Supergirl is going to be included in the Deluxe one. I could be wrong in this though, so do keep that in mind. And the Supergirl, Power Girl rather, is going to be included in the Deluxe one. And Power Girl and Flashes and Green Lanterns are going to be included in the Ultimate one. So 9 DLC characters, quite a lot of characters though, I suppose. There's also going to be in the Ultimate Edition 2 different shaders, so you'll be able to change the colour slightly of Defender and Destroyer. However, I will say though that 9 characters that you're willing to throw into a DLC, into an edition like that, kind of makes me wonder how many other characters are going to be on the horizon. I remember reading about a year ago when the game was announced that Ed Boon, who said that these games are going to have an aggressive DLC plan. It's a bit of a shame really, because I think it's quite anti-consumer. I think it's not really good for games to have 9 DLC characters, maybe even more. 9 is just the number that we know of, but maybe even more later on that you have to pay additional to whatever you get included in this Ultimate Edition. I think because it's such a significant amount of characters, they're already trying to rope people into buying the Ultimate Edition, which is obviously going to cost significantly more, probably what, £80, £100? I mean, who knows? It's a lot of characters at the end of the day. They're clearly trying to turn this into a platform like Capcom did with Street Fighter 5. Whether they're saying that or not is a different thing entirely, but to me that's what it seems like they're doing. But did it work for Capcom? Yes and no. As you can see, there's loyal followers. The game sold well, but it didn't sell wow, and not as many people are playing it now as they probably could have been. So I suppose the question is really, well, will this work out? But I will say that it is very anti-consumer. It's a bit of a shame. I really, really like Mortal Kombat games. I absolutely love them since I was a child, and I still love them today, and I'm continuously playing them. I quite like the first Injustice game as well, and for them to take this approach, it's a little bit scary and a little bit baffling, if I'm honest with you. Alright, so the final bit of news, although topic is probably the better way of saying it rather than news, because there's absolutely loads to talk about, is Fire Emblem. So this week they did a Fire Emblem Direct from Nintendo. Absolutely huge amount of news. And there's like 4 games that they talked about, and I think what's really interesting is I remember reading a few years ago that one of the directors or producers or someone like that at Nintendo said that Fire Emblem Awakening, which was a 3DS game, the first 3DS game, was actually designed to be the last ever Fire Emblem game. Or what it was they basically thought, this game's never selling enough, Let's basically give it its last game and let's just say goodbye to this franchise and, you know, store it away, maybe bring it back in the future, but for now that was going to be the last game. And Fire Emblem Awakening became this huge hit. We followed it up with Fire Emblem Fates, which was 3 games, remember, to get the whole story out of it. Very risky, but still sold well. Both games did critically very well as well. So I think what they're trying to do is capitalising on this Fire Emblem new set of fan base, really. Try and capitalise it all. Try and bring them back in, trying to bring them back into being a secure set of customers that they can rely on. And I think the plan is to continually keep putting Fire Emblem games out and make it one of their more dominant franchises later on down the line. Keep in mind as well that Fire Emblem is one of their hardcore franchises as well, with some of the rules and stuff that they have. But I really do think that it's all about capitalising on it and making sure that the audience sticks there for future years. So, first game, Fire Emblem, a bit of mouthful on this one. Fire Emblem Echoes Shadow of Valentia. So they showed off a story trailer, and as usual, it's about 2 warring cities. There's loads of beautiful hand-drawn art in this trailer actually as well. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it doesn't really show much of the game. It's inspired by a game called Fire Emblem Gaiden, which is, or Gaiden, I don't know how to say it properly. It was the second ever game that they released of Fire Emblem, and it was the only one that they released in Japan, or they only released in Japan. What's different to this game from most Fire Emblem games is there's dungeons, there's exploring, there's a bit of a world map it looks like. It's on the, but what they're doing with this one is a bit of more of a grander scale. You have 2 different protagonists, a male and a female. I think they're called Arm and Celica. Yeah, they are called Arm and Celica. And again, you're still going to have your free roaming and have flexible character progression as well. Don't really know what that means, if I'm honest with you, other than maybe you'll be able to change classes and whatnot, but we'll find out closer to the time. The game's due out on May 19th. There's also going to be an amiibo, couple of amiibos and an amiibo twin pack of both the protagonists. So yeah, I suppose in a way maybe it's a little bit cheap to make this game compared to others because it's based on Fire Emblem Gaiden. Might be a bit cheap to make it because I suppose you have a lot of the ideas there, and in a way it's just remaking something that exists. I mean they're clearly putting a lot of input into it, and it's looking completely different to how it did before. But the story, I suppose, is going to be similar to that, and you know, things like that. So there's maybe less work to do into getting it up and ready. And maybe because of the flexible character progression, maybe they're trying to appeal to a Western audience more than they ever did before. And that way, because it seems to be a typical Western gamer thing where we want character progression and things like that. So maybe they're trying to draw those people in, and then again add to this core following that they will have. So that way, if they release anything else in the future, like some of the other games that I've got on my list, that the audience is still there. Cool. The next game is very broadly titled Fire Emblem Switch. Not really talking about the game, not really showing anything, but it's going to be the first game that they've released on a home console in 8 years. The last one was in 2008 is what I believe it said. So actually it's 9. Nah, I'm doing bad maths. By the time it actually comes out, it'll be in 2018. So it's coming out in 2018 sometime. So it's actually going to be about 10 years since that last game on the Wii and this one here. So it completely skipped out the Wii U. Must have come out earlier on in the Wii as well for it to be such a decent amount of time in between. And it's interesting as well because the other games that they are doing and they're showing in this direct are portable, but clearly they're trying to do a grander game. They're trying to bring back to the Switch, you know, the home console, but maybe there's still going to be some of this some of these elements where they can make it, you know, a game that looks as good as a home console game should do, but maybe still has a little bit of that portability so you can still take it away with you. Because Fire Emblem is a good game to play on the go. There's a decent amount of depth and stuff, and the levels aren't typically too long, so maybe that's the type of audience looking for, trying to keep that same formula as well. So yeah, being grand and pick up and play. So the next game didn't really show off too much. They talked about it on the live reveal of the Switch. and they also showed a little bit more today, which is Fire Emblem Warriors, which is basically another version of Hyrule Warriors but with Fire Emblem characters instead. Made by Koei Tecmo again, who also make the Dynasty Warriors games, if I'm right in thinking. They haven't really said much. They just said that it's also going to come to new 3DS, not the original 3DS or the 3DS XL, only new 3DS and new 3DS XL. I'm guessing that the other consoles just ain't powerful enough to be able to run it. And I think when they did that with Hyrule Warriors, it didn't work out too well, and the game was just a shambles. But on the new 3DS, it worked fine. So yeah, that's going to be coming out in autumn this year, or the fall as they put it up on the stream. But yeah, it's coming out in autumn this year. So it could be one to check out. Don't know. The Hyrule Warriors is supposed to be a decent game, but nothing wow, nothing special, but good enough from what I remember. So the last game that they showed, which was the one that took up the bulk of the presentation, was a mobile game. And it's really interesting what they're doing there. It's going to be a bit of a blast in the past. Going to be having loads of characters that you can call from previous games, but basically what's different between this game and the others is that you're playing as a summoner. And naturally you can summon the old characters into your battles and they join your party and whatnot. Again, it's warring factions again. You're going to have an 8x6 grid, so that way you can play it on the mobile phones, and that way you've still got, it's not too big but not too small either. From what I've seen, you touch the characters that you want to tackle, just slide with your hand to where you want to go and so on. They're saying that it's going to be a simple game but quite intense. You still got the rock, paper, scissors element, and the rock, paper, scissors element is, and correct me if I'm wrong on the colours, but if you have a blue coloured weapon that is strong against a green coloured weapon, but a green coloured weapon is strong against a red coloured weapon, and a red coloured weapon is strong against a blue coloured weapon. And basically you can get into people's, you can attack people and kind of exploit their weaknesses a little bit depending on what weapons you have. So there's still going to be some depth there. There are going to be some orbs, and you use the orbs to basically summon the characters. Of course, it's wrapped up in microtransactions though. However, they're trying to claim that they're going to be a little bit fair with it, because when you summon them, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't quite understand this, but it's something that when you summon one character, it might take, let's say, 5 orbs, and then you summon the second character, that might only take 3 orbs, and so on. So they're saying that the first character you summon is always going to be the most expensive in terms of items and orbs, but the next ones are going to be cheaper and cheaper for you to do. Bit clever. I suppose it's a little bit sneaky as well. That way you'll be more willing to buy, more characters and so on. However, and then in turn buy more orbs, because let's be honest, you continuously spend that one extra orb. Well, 10 characters later, you've now spent an extra 10 orbs that you might not have done if it wasn't the cost of one less, so just one extra orb. And therefore you might not have any orbs, and then it's going to cost you to buy some more. So it's a bit of an interesting one that they're doing. But it could be fair, it could be exploited, but I suppose the time will tell how it's going to be, but it's definitely an interesting one. All the characters that they're reusing again are going to have a new design. I suppose that's to try and amalgamate the artworks, so they all look as they're from the same game now. They're going to have the lines recorded, again to fit the game, I suppose. And there's also going to be stars for each character, like you might see in some other mobile games, like the Final Fantasy ones. And the stars will denote strength. The same character can be a 1-star or a 5-star, 5 is the maximum. However, you can get a 1-star, for example, and then improve by giving them items and whatnot, improve them so they become a 2, 3, and eventually 5 stars. So there will be variations in the characters as well. Or variants of the characters is what I mean. So yeah, the varying strength, and there's also going to be a few different modes as well. There's going to be a training tower, which is just purely to gain XP, so having fights there. And weak stars, the characters will be able to level up, I suppose. And then hero battles, which is interesting because basically what happens is you go into this hero battle, and then there will be a character from another game who will be like, in effect, kind of like the mini boss or the main boss of it, and eventually you'll defeat them. Once you defeat them, you will be able to recruit them and have them in your party to use for future matches. The way that they defined it though, and I can't remember the words exactly, and maybe I'm a little bit wrong on this, but basically this made it sound like those matches are actually going to be designed to be harder than the normal matches. And maybe they've got that influence a little bit from Fire Emblem Conquest, who knows? But yeah, okay, fair play to them. So February 2nd is when that game's going to be coming out. This time though, unlike Super Mario Run, it's coming out to Android first. However, just as a side note, just something I read as well, I think it was last week, but Super Mario Run is going to be coming to March on Android as well. So yeah, Fire Emblem mobile game name, I don't know what the name is to be honest with you, will be coming out to mobile first on Google Play, and then yeah, transferred across to Apple. Right, cool. So that's the end of my podcast today. So that's been RK from Gimme Stream AM if you're looking for us on Twitch, or Gimme Stream if you're following us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So we're in the middle of, or I was in the middle of doing a Resident Evil 0 series. But I played a couple of hours of that. You can already see that, and that'll be forming my classic portion of the game. Recently, I've had a Last Guardian series up there as well. That's been up there for a while. You can check out. I played the whole game there. So it's more of a let's play, I suppose. And I'm going to try and stream this tonight if I don't get into trouble. That is. I have had a Resident Evil 7 game delivered to my house a couple of days early, so street date broken, way. So I'm going to be trying to stream that tonight from 10 o'clock, and actually I'm probably going to be dropping in with the other games now. I was originally going to play Absu, but I think this takes precedence. So yeah, please do check us out and join in, and if you like any of our stuff, then please do share and subscribe. So that's Gimme Stream, that's GIMME Stream, on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and then Gimme Stream AM if you're following us on Twitch. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, everyone.